These two characters are not the same, and that's real confusing. This isn't the case of a redesign from one generation to another. Pokemon has somehow created two different characters from a similar base. It all started back in Generation 1. While Pokemon fans could only play as the boy, there were other pieces of media that attempted to fill in the gaps. Most notably was the player's guide for Pokemon Red and Green, with a cover art drawn by Ken Sugimori, and it features Red, Blue, and an unnamed girl whose face we don't get to see. This was mostly just a way to showcase every starter Pokemon as well as bring some diversity for any fans who might play the game. Then during the time the Pokemon Adventures manga began, the character Green made her debut alongside Red and Blue. Though technically, Blue and Green switch their names in the Japanese and English versions. Though let's refer to this girl as Green because it makes more sense later. But even then, Green from the Pokemon Adventures manga is technically a completely different character from Leaf and Green in the video games. But her mere existence is a stepping stone to both. Because when the Kanto games were being remade as Fire Red and Leaf Green, Game Freak needed two playable characters because it was now Generation 3, and so the character of Leaf was created. But later on, when Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee were being made, Red and Blue returned as characters. But rather than having Leaf return, we were introduced to Green, who's a different character from both Leaf and Green from Adventures. Let's Go is definitively its own timeline, but now just having this character in the games and even appear in a side animation, Pokemon Evolutions, it all just makes everything a lot more confusing. But with the brief history lesson out of the way, let's take a look at their designs. So first of all, Green 1 at her most basic is a girl with long brown hair. This does come from the basic design on the cover of the player's guide, and possibly even the last trainer class just because of how we see it in Generation 1 and in later promotional material, but here we see her wearing the gloves from the player's guide and a black dress. And then when we move on to Leaf, the only real thing they have in common is the long brown hair. She's been given more traditional protagonist accessories like a hat and a bag, though Green in the manga would eventually wear the same outfit in later chapters for brand synergy. But when Leaf stands alongside Red, you can see how they were given complementing designs. Their colors are mirrored, where Red has a red shirt and blue pants, and Leaf has a blue shirt and red skirt. The colors on their hats are also reversed, and their bags are both yellow. They both even have similar shaped hair tufts sticking out from underneath their hats. And now I think we see here how these two aren't just meant to be counterparts, they're meant to be alternate versions of each other. Because after you choose which character you'll be playing as, you will not see the other in any part of the game. Unlike how May and Brendan interact in Ruby and Sapphire, and Lucas and Dawn would later interact in Diamond and Pearl. But then we get the introduction of Green, and her design takes cues from everyone. First of all, she doesn't wear a hat, and her clothing is mostly black, just like Green from the Adventures manga, but she is missing the gloves, instead wearing wristbands. She does have light blue to break up her design that's roughly the same color clothing that Leaf wears. The design on both of their shirts is even the same, the colors are just inverted. They also have the same bag, but the funniest thing to me is that when you look at her design without any color, she straight up looks like Green from the manga. So this Green is a blend of both. But the Let's Go games are already confusing enough because there's also Chase and Elaine, the protagonist characters, who are not Red and Leaf, but instead are characters younger than them who fulfill the same roles in the Kanto story. But it's weird that their designs are obviously meant to be iterations of Red and Leaf because they look so similar, and yet Red appears in the game as his own character. So let's take a look at Elaine. She again has long brown hair, but instead wears it tied back underneath a hat that resembles Red's. Her shirt is black and white, but her pants are again blue just like Leaf and Green. Aside from that, her design almost kind of becomes its own thing, but taking everything into account, looking at all the female characters who travel through the Kanto region to research Pokemon, you can see why it's weird that all four of these are separate characters. When it comes to other media, Leaf is now an alternate appearance for Red in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, further driving home the idea that the two of them are meant to be alternate versions of each other. But then, when we move on to Pokemon Masters, Leaf appears alongside Red and Blue as if the three of them were all trainers from the same region at the same time, similar to how the three Johto protagonists interact. And I kinda like the idea of having three characters like this all together. Leaf is the only one to appear in Pokemon Masters, which makes her the most definitive canon interpretation. Mostly because while Let's Go was a fine game, it's definitively its own timeline as none of the original characters appear in Masters, or have much of a crossover with any of the other games in the way that the original Red, Blue, and Fire Red and Leaf Green do. But as a way to still incorporate Let's Go alongside the other games, it was given the focus and setting of the final episode of Pokemon Evolutions, where we follow Green as she travels to Mewtwo's cave and encounters Trace and Elaine along the way. Her personality here is consistent with her portrayal in the game, but it's still strange that she got an anime appearance before Leaf, also an appearance in the trading card game. And of course there is the very first Green who appears in the Pokemon Adventures manga. In the end, it is just fascinating how Pokemon can have these different interpretations, adaptations, and references stemming from one base character. I know that Pokemon does operate in a multiverse, but in this aspect it's getting to the point where things are becoming inconsistent. Though Green's existence doesn't necessarily throw everything off, Leaf is still the main canon appearance of this character idea. In fact, I forgot, I think she also appeared in like Battle Revolution, which just kind of further drives the point home. And also, as I finish up editing this video, I realized maybe I should mention something about their signature Pokemon, because typically Leaf is shown with a Venusaur, while Green is shown with a Blastoise. Except for the fact that at one point when Leaf was given her own figurine, she was given a Squirtle. So that just kind of further complicates these things, as these two characters are just kind of mishmashed together. Though it's all such an interesting case that goes beyond just a redesign or even a replacement. This is a multi-universal, multi-generational mess. But out of all the iterations of the brown-haired girl from Kanto, tell me which one is your favorite. And so, that has been Leaf vs. Green. Thank you to all of my channel members who make videos like this possible, especially the great Gators Jackson, Justin R, Mr. Pig Puncher, and Quago. If you'd like to support, get a shout out here, and some access to emotes used in comments and live streams, then you can become a channel member today. You can also follow me on Twitter for more memes as well. Anyway, this has been GatorEX, and I'll catch you all later.
There's a whole new way to battle Pokemon, and it's wireless. Pokemon Fire Red and Pokemon Leaf Green are coming September 9th, each with a free wireless adapter. You can reserve your copy today and get a free pocket trainer's guide filled with hints, tips, and tricks to help you become a master of the Pokemon universe. Only for Game Boy Advance. Rated E for everyone.
Why don't you and Mewtwo both become my Pokemon?